Hello, class. We're going to talk about Browning Chapter 2. Let me pull that up here. Okay, wonderful. This chapter is going to really talk about identifying projects and finding award money. And this is really the first or second step. Sometimes if you have your purpose first, you sort of know what money to go after. But sometimes when you find money, it helps you really define your purpose. So it sort of depends on how you look at it. I'm just speaking to you from a grant writer perspective, and generally the steps that I follow. And again, sometimes I don't always start with, the need and the purpose. Sometimes I find a grant and then I figure how to articulate what I want to do into that grant. So that can be done as well too. I've gotten a lot of grants that way as well. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. Okay. All right. Okay. So becoming a grant searching detective, right? Looking for notices, funding, economic and political forces that are going to shape opportunities. Right now, the big one is DEI. Every grant I write, once the grant is written, I scrub it to make sure DEI is not anywhere in the grant, unfortunately. Diversity, equity, inclusion. We got to take all those words out, uh, particularly for federal grants, but sometimes even the state grants. And this is very opposite than just a couple of years ago, where you needed to, when you finished your grant, you needed to go through it and make sure you had enough mentions or enough integration of the words diversity, equity, and inclusion in almost every grant, and how the politics have really changed and shifted that. And then also adapting quickly. Don't sit around thinking whether you're going to drop the words DEI and figuring out if it fits with your philosophy or not. I suppose you could do that, but you're going to be doing that while other people are out there getting the grants that you should be getting, right? And so it really does require a very quick adoption and a very quick shift. And that's just one example of many examples that are similar to that. Okay. Starting with your own classroom needs, school needs, district needs, collecting information from colleagues, from school leaders, right? District-wide priorities, all of these things are important to help you identify the need and to help know how you're going to use that terminology to help you search for grants. And another thing that's important to note is the more you do this, the better you get at it. The more databases you subscribe to, the more grant notices that you get. You're really entering and becoming a part of a grant writing ecosystem. Okay, and I call it an ecosystem because the more databases that you subscribe to, where you want all of their grant writing opportunities, before you know it, you're getting, sometimes 10 to 20, 30 of these every month. And you not really having to go out there and look as heavily because those opportunities are coming into your email. Okay. Collecting needs efficiently using email surveys. If you're quick at putting together a Qualtrics survey or a SurveyMonkey or even a Google form survey, something that's going to be going to all your school or all your school leaders within your district, so that maybe you only need a couple of questions, 2 or 3, of what are the most important needs in the district and why. Again, articulating how that's going to really know that it's something that is coming now from your district or your school, not just from you and your school principal. Everybody has buy-in. Everybody has a role in the process of really collecting this data and articulating the vision. Avoiding overcomplicating the system where you have surveys that are 15, 20 questions that go out to hundreds of people, where that in itself could be a study. You sometimes want to avoid over collecting. Again, you just want to make sure that you identify the needs, not do a complete study. Okay. Sometimes small departments are overlooked and large departments don't always have the greatest need. So understanding how do you prioritize that other than what the people in your organization is telling you. Is there some particular need that maybe doesn't get as much attention? Where again, the grants are for that particular money. One particular example may be LGBTQ. Say there's a grant out there for LGBTQ, but your district, only 2% of the people in your district say that LGBTQ support is important. What do? Say, well, I don't want to, it's not important enough for my district. You could, but if there's a grant that is addressing that in particular, I would say you could fulfill that 2%. I mean, you could try to focus in on all the other priorities, but if there's particular money for that particular priority, I think you might not want to pass up that opportunity just because the need is so low on the category of needs within your school or district. Okay. Compatible funding partners, right? Who are all the different partners that are compatible that you may have gotten funded in the past that funded your school or your district or things like that. Matching needs to their interests. What are they interested in doing? Every foundation has a purpose. Okay, finding out what their purpose is and how that aligns with your own purpose and your own vision and mission is a wonderful exercise. Okay? And avoid wasting time on things that are not a poor fit. Or I've written a lot of those grants, because people need money, and I've consulted with them on going after grants that are just not. Sometimes we get them, sometimes we don't, but we clearly know that it's a poor fit, and we work really hard to finding a way to articulate that. Okay. So things that are, often funded are curriculum development, equipment, technology, personal development, program evaluation, and publication and outreach. So you find a lot of grants for those type of things. Are there any corporations, right? In general, in education, we go after federal funding from federal agencies, from state agencies, but at the same time, we don't spend enough time going and seeking help from private foundations. Corporations that generally have a foundation attached to them, local businesses or corporations, companies with community involvement programs and corporate social responsibility initiatives that are looking to give money away. And remember, sometimes there's more money than there are people to give it to. You just have to be able to find them and be able to connect your vision with what they're trying to do. Okay. How do you find these? Chamber of Commerce listing, economic development agencies. Every county and I think every city has an economic development agency. Do you know what your economic development agency? Maybe that's something that you should look up. What's probably like? What city do you work for? Sometimes if they're really small cities, they might not have one. But what city do you work for, and can you go find their economic development agency? Okay, local business sections of the newspaper as well, or online. Generally, we don't really read the newspaper. The last time I read the newspaper, I was a doctoral student, where I used to get delivered the Arizona Republic. I lived in Arizona. That was about, going on over 20 years that I actually read the actual paper. Now I read all of my news online. The internet, right? For sure, that's the way to go. Corporate websites, using your key terms, using AI to help you find different sources, right? I'm going to put that down. Okay, Foundations that support donors. Education is a major funding area for a lot of foundations, and this is also a key resource for a lot of funding. Okay, state and federal agencies, you monitor the Federal Register announcements, you subscribe to all of them that have a sort of distribution list of some sort. State departments, educational websites, federal, the U.S. Department of Education, the California Department of Education. Can you subscribe to their lists? And then tracking competitive and formula grants. Federal funding for schools, you have direct grants. You have pass-through state grants. Those are grants. A pass-through grant is where you get the money, but you pass it out to your local nonprofit organizations that are helping advance the education in your region. Say, for example, some of your students are experiencing homelessness. Right now, there's a lot of money to address homelessness, right? So you get the money and you may take an administrative cut. Sometimes it's 10 to 15% around there. And the rest, 85 to 90%, you grant out to the different organizations that are working on those issues and do it effectively within, that are serving your school or your district. So that's what a pass-through grant is, that, you get the money and you pass it through. The reason that the federal, these grants don't fund these little organizations directly is because they're not involved with sort of little small money transactions. And a lot of times they don't have the knowledge to check whether those little organizations are legitimate organizations. Those responsibilities lie on you, the school or the district, to find them and seek those out. Okay. Winning government grants, understanding that there's always a scoring rubric. The sheets, it's called there's different names to it, but it's a popular name is RFP. Request for proposals, right? That's what an RFP is. Generally, those are about 100 pages. As part of those 100 pages, they have a scoring rubric in there. They tell you exactly the rubric for every different section of the grant, how they're going to score it, what they're looking for. It's very important that you read those scoring rubrics and make sure that your grant aligns with what they're looking for. Following guidelines precisely, down to like how many characters you're allowed to write per section sometimes. Focus on the high point sections and making sure you get all the points possible. Sometimes you may not have the best idea, but if you're clearly aligned with their rubrics, you have a very good chance of getting that grant. And then you have also, for your area, maybe you have an empowerment or an enterprise community zone that generally is being looked at by the federal government, that is going to be funded or has a priority for funding due to, the ones that we have generally in the Central Valley are really the sort of like high poverty zones, right? Where there's really high poverty in a lot of our different, rural communities. And, through those you get special points for funding if you're working in those regions. Okay. So the lessons learned is preparation leads to success. Demographics can influence the outcomes, especially in the Central Valley. Almost always when you compare the Central Valley to the state of California, we rank higher in almost every poverty indicator. And we rank lower in almost every school success indicator or educational achievement indicator. And so all of that data it's not good data, right? Who wants to live in high poverty, schools? Who wants to live in high poverty communities? But from a grant writer perspective, we really see those as opportunities to bring money in and to, get, to write grants that are going to be focusing on those things. Okay. And the action step is search daily for funding opportunities, or again, every day at least try to subscribe to one additional listserv or at least a couple per week. Be creative in your search terms. Have multiple terms that you're looking for. And again, AI maybe perhaps is a good opportunity to ask AI for some assistance and learning from successful grant examples. Searching to see if there's grant examples online, or even perhaps I can even provide some that would be helpful for the particular type of grant that you plan to write. Okay, so the reflection questions is: what needs are the most urgent in your school? What funding partners best align best with your school and your needs? And how will you organize your grant searching? So what's next? Understanding format, learning how proposals are evaluated, and preparing to write competitive applications. Thank you very much.